Good evening. Once again, joining us for Meteorology Lab channel, talking about weather across Texas and the rest of the U.S. And we've got a little bit of stratus and stratocumulus today here in our part of Texas. So what might be causing that? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that for this Sunday evening edition. And the easy answer, basically, we've got the Gulf opened up. We're bringing in moisture from the south. But we do see that often during the summer, so why don't we have this kind of stratus and stratocumulus overcast during the summer? Well, the main difference is that we have some baroclinicity in the atmosphere. We have cold air up to the north in this part of Oklahoma and Kansas. So that thermal gradient is really the key to what's going on here. And we'll take a look at some of the surface charts and go into a little more detail with that. Out to the west, you can see we've got our next system coming in. Lots of open cell cumulus out off the Pacific coast. And you can see we're pretty much outlining the extent of the troughing off the California coast right there. And looks like even maybe the cold core low, possibly up in this area here. Out ahead of it, we can see our baroclinic leaf right here, kind of tracing it a little bit like that. The main shortwave trough associated with that probably over Nevada and California. And then over the Texas Panhandle itself, lots of cirrus. You can see that very clearly there around the Amarillo area. And then as you go further west into the Four Corners area, we pick up more mid and high cloud. And look at that, you can actually see some of the snow-capped mountains there in the Santa Fe area. Okay, for our temperatures for today, this is the high temperatures across the southern part of the U.S., and you can see lots of 80s there in the Panhandle. Some of that downslope flow coming off the Rockies, heating things up in that region. But here, 60s in northeast Texas and Oklahoma. And that contrasts very sharply with the 80s we have along the Gulf Coast. And that really is the key to why we have so much overcast in this part of Texas. And so if I draw the isotherms, there's our 80s, our 70s go all the way up to South Dakota. And it's kind of funny, it's actually warmer around Yankton, South Dakota than it is in Houston. And then going further north, 60s like that. So we've got the warm air advection overriding that. And this cold air here actually forms kind of a bubble. If you think of cold air being very dense, let me draw this out real quick. We're looking at a cross-section right here. The cold air is actually going to form kind of a bubble like this. So there's the cold air right there. The warm air is located right here, so you're going to tend to get some overrunning. And this is what we call isentropic lift. It's going to ride up and over that cold bubble and develop this lift here, and that's what we're seeing outside today. And another way we can see it is on the SPC mesoscale analysis. The red here is our isotherms. So we can see that traced out pretty well there. We have had some cooling during the evening hours. Cools very rapidly out in the dry air in the Panhandle. But there's another look at that overrunning over the cold air mass up to the north. And so maybe we do have a little bit of a warm front to the south, maybe somewhere in this area. So we'll be looking for that on the surface charts here. This is the synoptic scale analysis right here. And before I get into that, let me just take a look at chat, make sure we're coming in good. My levels look good here. Kevin McKinney is here, and Sue M, Fun with Tech, and Michael Burrell Fred Reamer, way up there in North Dakota. Alexi in Central Texas. Brett Dean, 26 in Southern Jersey. Hard to believe. 20s, man. Fred, mentioning the open cell convection. Jason Boggs says it's been nice there in the Texas Panhandle, but it's been windy. Yeah, some of that downslope flow there. Felix checking in back after 3 to 4 days away, working on storm and flood response there in Northern California. Yeah, quite a busy job there this year. Ryan Toomies is here. Sarah Wood. And Felix Lopez reviews the replays on YouTube. Excellent. And Ron Chalfant there in Southern California. Yeah, let's see what's going on in Southern California. We've got that Pacific system pushing inland. And looks like the main front has gone through during the day today. And we're actually seeing swaths here from 2 different satellites. So we see one swath there and another here. But overall, the system itself has been pushing east to west through that part of the country. And this is where the steeper lapse rates are, back in the base of that trough right there, especially towards the cold core system here. So that's going to bring in the more convective type of cells, whereas out ahead of it, you're going to tend to get more of a stratiform type precipitation area, especially along the warm front. Okay, let's see where we're at. Yeah, let's take a look at the 500 millibar chart. This is for 12Z. This is this morning. So it's a little bit old. We don't have the newer Canadian data, but I do like their charts here. They're very detailed, and they've got a lot of additional data that we don't have on other plots. You can see they've kind of blended in the global Canadian field along with the observed data here. And we're seeing basically the base of the trough, kind of like I mentioned earlier, and then the main jet core coming onto the coast around San Francisco right there, heading up towards the Dakotas like that. And we would also be looking for a subtropical jet. That could be a factor in this kind of weather pattern too. But this is 500 millibars. We're not going to see that this low in the troposphere. We would actually have to pick out a 300 millibar plot. And for that, probably best to go to SPC. And I probably need to start using some more of their charts. They've got some good stuff there. Okay, well that's 300 millibars. I know they've got a plot. I think that's going to be under, yeah, their upper air maps right there. So 0Z, do we have the latest 250 millibar chart? 60Z. Yep, that's current. And yeah, we're picking up a little bit of a subtropical jet right there on the Tucson and Amarillo upper air observations right there. And then this up here is the polar front jet. So you can see a little bit of a coupling effect right here. And this is what we might see the day before a convective weather situation on the plains. And maybe tomorrow we would get some more of that coupled area moving out onto the plains before the main trough itself approaches. Now, do we have enough moisture for severe weather the next couple of days? We'll have to take a look at that with the other charts. But yeah, I'm just now realizing we're getting into spring here, so we've got to start watching for that kind of pattern setting up. Okay, let's see. Let's take a look at some... Yeah, let's do the thermal analysis real quick. So you've probably, if you've watched this over the past few months, you've probably noticed, you probably know to look for these thickness bands like we have right there. There's another thickness band right there, and that's going to alert us to where the fronts are. So for today, I think we're going to go something like this. front pushing through LA into Vegas, and then up to Salt Lake City. Then we picked that up as a warm front through North Dakota. Okay, and then let's see, we've probably got one more weak front in the Texas area. We don't show that very well on this particular chart because this is 1,000 through 500 millibars, but maybe I'll look for an old front in that zone right there. Okay, do we see this front? Well, we do have a difference between 60s and 50s up in Oklahoma to lower 70s in the Corpus Christi, San Antonio area. So maybe we'll perhaps go something like this. Yeah, that divides lower 70s from mid 60s up north. Okay, so we'll go with that for just kind of like a very weak front coming up through the I-10 area, and then probably by tomorrow morning and tomorrow we're going to see that lift northward as the warm air advection continues lifting that northward. And then the front out to the west, where is that? Let's take a look and see if we can find that real quick. Looks definitely very windy out in Arizona in the Four Corners. Gusts up to 43 right there around Winslow, 32 at Prescott, and 31 around Grand Canyon, and 52 there at Cedar City. So that's going to be just over 60 miles an hour. And then the front itself, very well defined. Snow there in Ely, northwest winds at Tonopah. And so we're probably looking at the front, something like that, maybe a little further back. Very dynamic day in that part of California and Nevada. And then up in Washington, we may pick up a little bit more of the cold core activity. So I'd be looking for maybe some showers up in that area. I don't think that cold core is quite on shore just yet. Anyway, let's move on and maybe look at some soundings. Let's try bringing up the sounding for, I guess, San Diego. I can't remember what NKX is, but let's check that out. That's going to be right around Orange County, maybe to northern San Diego. Pretty good moisture in the lower part of that sounding. Above that, a little bit of warm air, so maybe a little bit of subsidence going on in the mid-levels there. And then we'll take a look at a sounding a little bit further up the coast, maybe to Vandenberg. And we know that that's going to be a little bit back behind the cold front. And what we see here, don't see our classic front-on version, but we do see very steep low-level lapse rates. So that's, as you might have known from watching this webcast, that's a good sign that we've got air mass modification going on in the lower part of the troposphere. Cold air rolling across the California coast. Cold air just off the surface, and it's mixing with the warmer air down near the surface, and as a result we get this very steep lapse rate from the surface up to about 800 to 750. And above that, yeah, it's quite a bit of warm air there up at 600 millibars. So any convection in there would be certainly shallow, topped out at about 10,000 feet or so. And let's see what's going on out in the plains at Fort Worth. We know that they're north of a weak front. The air mass shows pretty high relative humidities. Dry air above that. Let me see if I can find a sounding that really brings out that front-on version. Yeah, Shreveport right there. So you see that front-on version right there, both the dew point, or I'm sorry, both the moisture and the temperature line, they go up and then to the right like that. So that's our front-on version. That's the very top of that. Above that, tropical air riding over the top of that air mass. Okay, let's take a look at the dynamics. Looking at the GFS. You can see the bulk of the stronger dynamics moving into the central California area right there. So that's crossing a little bit back behind the cold front. Remember the cold front itself out in this area right here. And then over the next day or so, we're going to see that mostly take aim on Colorado into Nebraska and Kansas. And then by evening, 24 hours from now, it's all the way out towards Iowa, Omaha, Kansas City, and St. Joseph out in this area here. And then it looks like by Wednesday and Thursday, it heads mostly into the northeastern U.S., out in this area right here. Very zonal flow across the rest of the U.S. And then for later this week, not much change. Get a few waves working across the central Rockies on Saturday and Sunday. That probably supports a weak wave out in that area. But overall, pretty quiet the next 7 to 10 days. Okay, so I guess we're ready to head into the forecast. Let me get this chart set up here. All right, this is the GFS. We're looking at the current data. And before I get into that, I'll take one more look at chat. Wow, a lot of chat here. I don't think I can really go through all this, but lots of weather discussion here. Ryan mentioning 30 to 35 knot winds hitting the coast there. Lloyd mentions down to -3, where he's located right there, 30.80 inches. And Gulf of Mexico waters, Ryan says, have been higher so far, starting out in 2017. Okay. Starting out with the GFS, you can see that front pushing through the Vegas and LA area, kind of like what I mentioned earlier. And let's see what's going to happen over the next 24 hours. Very fast transition of that front across the northern Rockies. So it looks like it's mostly an upper level system. And then we find it moves very quickly out to the Iowa and St. Joseph area by tomorrow evening. And starting to come down into northwest Oklahoma and towards Amarillo there along the tail end. And I think probably we're going to have kind of like a southwesterly flow across Texas, and that may carry some of the moisture pretty far to the east. We don't like to see very strong veered winds in a severe weather situation. That is, if we're chasing. Of course, if you're worried about severe weather, you don't want the ingredients to set up for you, but I guess that's just kind of a holdover from my chasing days there. Let's see what the winds look like. I set a cursor over the central Texas area at midday. And we can see winds are out of the south-southwest there, and then right off the surface, 1 kilometer, they're veered even more and very strongly out of the southwest. See 35 knots right there, out of maybe 210 to 220. So that's what we are talking about when we're discussing scouring out of moisture due to strong downsloping, strong southwesterly winds. That will eventually translate down to the surface and pick up the moisture and get rid of it. Okay, so heading on into, let's see, lost my place there. Okay, heading into Tuesday. For our webcast then, we're going to see the cold front move to the south into southeast Texas, so maybe chances of rain there for the Houston area. Strong cold air advection into the Midwest. And then you can see these thickness lines starting to pile up in Idaho and the Great Basin area. So this is going to be our next chance of rain coming in from the west. Okay, so this is going to be on Wednesday. Looks like the track of this is mostly going to be to the north into the Dakotas. Tail end going into southern Oregon there. And looks pretty quiet for Texas here. And then for Thursday, looks like pressures are coming up there in Canada. Let me move the chart. There we go, so we can see that better. You can see those pressures coming up there in the Canadian prairies. And then by Friday, looks like a lot of cyclogenesis out in the Denver area. So that's going to keep that front up to the north from progressing southward. So we do have the frontal boundary just to the south of this area of very strong thickness gradient, but the very strong pressure falls around Colorado and Wyoming is keeping that from moving south. So we're going to have to wait for this main wave to move eastward before that moves south. So there goes the wave into Illinois on Saturday and Sunday. Looks like chances of wintry weather for northern Indiana around then. The wave is still not, or the cold air is still not moving south on Sunday. Looks like we've got some more systems coming in the wake of that. There goes another one through the I-70 area around Kansas City on Monday morning. And that makes a little bit of an incursion southward into Oklahoma, but it looks like pressure falls starting to hit again in Colorado around Tuesday. But it does look like that cold air mass sinks into Texas by Tuesday right there, Tuesday the 14th. Okay, looks like things quiet down after that, and next system after that coming in around the 20th or 21st. But that's getting towards the end of that GFS run. Okay, I think that's about all I've got. Let me take a look at the chat real quick. 504 decameters. Yeah, Fred's not happy about that up in North Dakota. But, yeah, a few more weeks of winter here for sure. Anyway, I think that's going to be it for me today. I appreciate you watching, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining.